LEGO Star Wars had a lot of great waves. Ones that immediately come to mind maybe 2013's Attack of the Clone Wave or 2019's 20th anniversary line. But there's another which is repeatedly overlooked, 2018's Solo a Star Wars story wave. Today I want to tell you why this theme was so underrated by showing you how great it actually was. Welcome to the Brick Collectibles show. Write what you think the most underrated Star Wars wave was in the comments and let's get into it. Solo was the second Star Wars spin-off movie Disney released, the first obviously being Rogue One. After a relatively poor reception from critics and audiences, Disney decided to hold the production of any future movies to solely focus on the rise of Skywalker, and we know how that went. To be fair, Solo was put in a very difficult situation, being released only months after the previous Star Wars movie, which was also the highly divisive The Last Jedi. But obviously LEGO was there and came out with a range of 10 sets in late April. This first line consisted of 5 minifig scale sets, 1 Polybag, 2 Brickheadz and 2 buildable figures. Yes, those kinds of buildable figures. Solo's flagship set though was the Kessel Run Millennium Falcon. Until this day, this remains as one of the most unique interpretations of the ship we've seen, and only one of two that broke from the traditional grey color scheme. Now, that of course also causes some issues, like the white of the bricks not matching the printed white of the cockpit, or the gaps between the panels being even more apparent. This set also had the misfortune of being released a year before the best looking playscale Falcon ever that majorly improved the paneling. On the other hand, this is such a unique take on a classic model, obviously coming with all the usual features and even some extra ones, like this pod in front which can be taken off to simulate the scene from the Kessel Run. Also, excuse all the dust on here, I've hardly touched this set in the last 5 years. Not only is this a pretty good build though, but it also comes with 7 minifigures, with all of them being decent at least. This is like the perfect version of Han Solo from the movie in my opinion, one of the few definitive Han figures if you don't want a hyper-specific variant. It uses the brown jacket and even gives him some leg printing too, but despite all of this figure actually only hardly stacks up to other Han versions from this wave. The Lando figure from the set is, together with the Cloud City version, the best this character has ever looked. Face and hair are immaculate, we've got a cape in 2 different colors and wonderful printing on torso and legs. I'm also just very happy to have a Donald Glover figure, but that's beside the point. Chewie is another character that got a major overhaul, which isn't as positive as Lando's did. I personally really like the 2 belts as well as a little pouch on his stomach, but the face does look quite weird compared to previous versions. He's getting another figure later as well though. Kira is actually Emilia Clarke's only character that received a LEGO adaptation, and they may not have gotten her perfect, but I think this is a fine figure. It matches her base jacket rather well, though an even better version is still to come. Quiet Holdside was a minor character at most in Solo, but it is cool to get him here considering this is the only time we've ever gotten a Pike in LEGO form. They molded a brand new helmet piece for him and also used the dress piece here, which was new in 2018. S1D6 SA5 is probably one of the coolest droid designs we've seen from LEGO Star Wars. Yes, he uses a regular head, but they put so much work into this figure, it's pretty crazy. There's detailed printing on the face, on the back of the head, the back and front of the torso, as well as on the feet to simulate the dirtiness that comes from working on Kessel. Lastly, we've also got DDBD. It's a very interesting design which isn't too over the top, but it's always cool to get unique droids from LEGO Star Wars. So the Falcon was a refreshing take on an iconic ship that came with great figures, but the first Solo line also included the perfection of an iconic model, being the Imperial TIE Fighter. This TIE Fighter basically took aspects of all the other TIEs from the 2010s and combined them to make the definitive version. Its size was perfect for the price point of $70, and despite the ship actually not featuring too much in the movie itself, it was nice to get such a great version of the Starfighter. Also great for the value of this set were its minifigs. Han Solo in his Imperial Mudtrooper uniform is one of the only times LEGO has given us proper figures of the Imperial Navy. The combination of grey and green with a beautiful helmet piece and the unique cape really makes this figure special, even though it's not as universal of a minifig as his Millennium Falcon version was. This was also the first time we got to see a Tobias Beckett figure. Another version would follow later on, but for the time, him in his Imperial disguise would be the only one. It's another figure wearing Imperial Navy armor, which is sick, and the tone of this figure overall is just great. The Mimban Stormtrooper was one of 2018's best minifigures, because it just had so many things going for it. It used a completely new helmet to start with, as well as the previously mentioned cape, all draped in tons of printing down to the very toes. Lastly, there was also an Imperial TIE Fighter pilot, but that was a pretty standard minifig, so nothing special here. But the Solo theme didn't just set out to improve on previous designs, they also introduced new designs like Moloch Speeder for example. It does look a bit like a tank, but in doing so it matches its in-universe counterpart pretty perfectly and even comes with play features like the rotating gun in front or the dog cage, which could be opened to release the Corellian hounds that were also included in the set. This was really just a new take on a Landspeeder, a category that was previously dominated by Luke's Landspeeder from Tatooine, so to see a more rustical shot at this genre was refreshing. But obviously I can't forget to speak on the minifigures as well, especially Moloch. While the body is already fantastic, covered in printing all around and using the new dress piece at the time, the highlight was clearly the head. LEGO decided to go ahead and mold an entirely new piece here, which just shows how much love was put into the subtheme. As a henchman though, LEGO also decided to include Revolt here. Even for such a minor character, LEGO decided to not only give him tons of printing, but also create an entirely new cap piece that was only used once again after this. This set was fantastic all in all, but the second speeder involved in that chase on Corellia is even cooler in my opinion. Han Solo's Landspeeder is one of the best speeders LEGO Star Wars has ever produced, looking like something you'd actually see people drive in universe, unlike Moloch's Landspeeder. It's stylish and kind of reminiscent of real cars while still being distinctly Star Wars. The color scheme is also something I feel like we don't see much outside of CIS models, and I think it really adds to the sleek look. You can also pop off the hood of the speeder to store extra ammunition for the springfire missiles underneath and take a look at the engine. I don't know whether something like this features in any other Star Wars sets, but I really love it. To man the speeder, LEGO also gave us two figures, being Han and Kira in their Corellian outfits. I am personally a huge fan of this Han look. It's scrappier, I love all the details, and especially the color scheme is so good that I can't help but adore it. The only thing I would change is the face to make it a little grimier as well. Kira profits from many of the same aspects, but the silver jacket introduced a whole new super interesting element. I feel like the color isn't often used for any minifigures not wearing armor, so seeing it here, especially against the strong red of her undershirt, is pretty cool. The last part of the Corellian chase is featured in the Imperial Patrol Battle Pack. This speeder actually matches the one from the movie pretty well. LEGO did something different here with the angles, but obviously you're not buying a battle pack for the builds. They always go all out on random Stormtrooper variants, so the Patrol Troopers, which were only seen in the movie for a few seconds, got new helmet molds of course. This is such a sick one-off figure, but sadly you only get two in the set, because this released during the time where LEGO would randomly put two characters in Battle Pack that had no business being there. The Imperial Recruitment Officer, for example, was such a minor character that no one paid attention to, but here he is nonetheless. It's not a bad figure and we don't actually get too many Imperial officers in this specific grey, but another Patrol Trooper would have been a lot cooler. Same goes for the Imperial Immigration Officer. What kind of figure is this? It's another really random inclusion. I like her less than a Recruitment Officer, but at least she has a unique helmet. A Patrol Trooper would still have been cooler though. Aside from the playscale sets though, LEGO released two buildable figures as well. Han Solo's one suffers from the same issue that so many of these characters suffered under, being the poor translation of faces into LEGO. It just doesn't work at all, which is why the Range Trooper, who was yet to get a figure at this point, looked a lot better and his bulky appearance certainly benefited from the buildable figure style. There were also two Brickheadz, Han and Chewie. I think they're fine. I've personally never been the guy for Brickheadz, but from what I've seen from the theme, these just seem pretty average. LEGO then put out a single Polybag 2 for this first line, which was the Imperial TIE Fighter. Not gonna lie, it's pretty ugly and the proportions are so off it's actually insane, but just 2 months later they came out with the Kessel Mine Worker and the Han Solo Mud Trooper one. In 2017 and 2018, LEGO Star Wars released a whole handful of Polybags featuring minifigs on these little stands, and Solo was in luck to get two as well. The Han Solo figure was such a cool variation of his Mud Trooper version that appeared in the TIE Fighter, and the Kessel Mine Worker could help you with expanding your Millennium Falcon figure selection. But believe it or not, another 2 months later we got a fourth Polybag, this time depicting the Imperial AT-Hauler. It was a far better build than the TIE Fighter, but similarly to it, it didn't stand alone. In August, LEGO followed up with the second wave of Solo sets, purely focused on a single part of the movie, the heist on Vandal. Representing the inciting incident, LEGO had completely ignored this part of the movie so far, but they made it up with 3 retail sets in total. The Imperial AT-Hauler was the biggest set of this wave, and the second biggest set of the sub-theme right behind the Millennium Falcon. I actually reviewed this model 3 years ago, and it has yellowed quite a bit since, but this remains as one of the most unique Imperial ships to date. There are obvious play features here, like the cockpit's interior being accessible and the statues on the side, but the best one is by far the movability of the wings. Well, you can hardly call them wings, but you can switch them to flight mode to take off, with the ability to pick up the little container included here as well. This will become relevant again with the Imperial Conveyex Transport, but we'll get to that in a minute. Included in the set were also 5 figures, which is an okay number for $100, but let me tell you, these are pretty fantastic. Rio Durant did not only get a new headpiece, which integrated goggles as well, but he also received brand new arm pieces to simulate his forearmed look. Because of this piece, the figure is also expensive, and it's so cool that LEGO made a piece like this for a character that died pretty much at the beginning of the movie. Same goes for Val. She dies pretty much at the same time as Rio, yet LEGO's figure of her is very detailed and she uses the fairly rare Afro piece. This has only been used on 8 figures and it's perfect for an in-universe look, especially to match the level of detailing on the rest of the minifig. For some reason, Kira is also on the set. It's quite a good figure. I'm personally not the biggest fan of the hair, but the minifig is better than her Millennium Falcon iteration. Another random inclusion are Dryden's guards. We don't really see Crimson Dawn members until after the heist, but since there isn't a single set depicting Dryden's yard, I'm happy that these were included somewhere. I'm a big fan of random aliens in Star Wars, and you get 2 in this set, so that's still better than some random Imperial officer. To directly interact with the Imperial AT-Hauler, LEGO also put out the Imperial Conveyex Transport. Now this is probably the most divisive set of the wave, given its relatively high retail price of $90, while you only get 2 train cars that don't look too similar to the actual transport from the movie. All in all, I think it's a fine set, especially because that design from the movie was incredibly hard to translate into Lego form, and especially the back car is a really good build. You obviously have all the typical stuff like an interior for the drivers in the front, a rotatable gunner seat in the back with stud shooters, and the walls of the back car can also lift up. There are a few other things as well though, like this little hatch on top to match the scene of Han breaking into the train, and what's most important for us now, you can detach the two cars from one another. This allows the AT-Hauler to come in and actually pick up the car as was the plan in Solo, but obviously that didn't go right. Also, similar to the AT-Hauler, you get an amazing minifigure selection here. Normally there's 5 of them, but one is a double, so I sold that one. Han got his 5th and final figure of the line here, and it's another really good one. Sure, dual molded legs for this coat would have been better, but the winter design absolutely rocks, and I love the inclusion of the glasses here. Chewbacca got the same treatment, with this figure being basically the exact same as the one from the Millennium Falcon, only exception being the added goggles. He still looks weird to be honest, and I would have really liked to have seen the glasses be molded, but there already is a newly molded head/helmet piece in this set. That piece belongs to this guy, the Range Trooper. Lego went all out for the sub-theme in terms of Stormtrooper variants, and this figure perfectly fits that mold. Not only did we get a unique helmet, but they also included a cloth shoulder pad, which makes this figure look even sicker. And even the usual extra Imperial minifigure was a banger here. This helmet has been used plenty of times, but Lego pivoted to a gunmetal grey body, which is one of the coolest colors there is. We also have another cloth piece for him, which further highlights the fact that this character was meant to endure the cold. Of course though, the heist failed, and that was because of these guys, the Cloud-Rider Swoop Bikes, the last big element of the movie that was missing. These speeders are definitely better than the norm, and I want to lay focus on how detailed these actually are. Very much reminiscent of the speeder from the ambush on Ferrix, both in color and in design, and I have to say, speeders with sidecars are just so cool. The main draw of the set were the figures though, and they finally filled some of the most important holes the other sets didn't. For one, we finally got Enfys Nest, the main antagonist for the first 2/3 of the movie, and this is a glorious minifig. A helmet with this level of detailing is basically unheard of, and in addition to that, it's also dual molded. But because that wasn't enough yet, she also got a 2-sided cape with extra printing on the back. Weasel is the second and last member of the Cloud Riders. I wish we'd have got more, but it is a really nice minifigure. The dark red color scheme is neat, and of course Lego also made a unique dual molded helmet for him, which makes it the second one from this set. And the last hole filled is Tobias Beckett in his regular outfit. I like this look, and I'm a big fan that his very temporary Imperial figure isn't the only representation he got. To be fair, the face is a little weird, but we can excuse that for now. So, after showing you all these sets, I hope you understand why this line was so great and can appreciate it to the same extent that I do. It's, as mentioned, one that often goes under the radar despite providing fresh takes/improving on iconic vehicles, as well as introducing so many new ones. With figures like Rio Duran, the Range Trooper, Enfys Nest and the Patrol Trooper, it absolutely deserves to play in the big leagues of great Star Wars waves. But if you also want a retrospective like this for Marvel, I recommend you now check out my video on the first 2 Marvel CMFs on screen right now, but most importantly, I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, goodbye.